Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the latest installment in the Walking Dedicated Men series. If you've been watching this from the beginning, you know that this is from One Faith, One People Ministries. That's my website, onefaithonepeopleministries.com, and I'm Andrew Gabriel Roth. And our topic for this week, or this time, is Abraham Counts the Stars, which is the 6th video in this series. Let's get started. We got a lot to go through. I thought that one of the things we should do is kind of recap the rules from Adam. So as we've been going through this series, what I hope I have shown is that the scripture contains astronomy codes that enable the ancients to enjoy a calendar more accurate and more in tune with the seasons than anything we moderns use today. By using scripture, the instructions emerge that tell us how to keep time properly, what to do. It is also important to note that the calendar of previous generations never really goes away. It doesn't give way to a completely better system. Instead, the calendar of Adam passes down to Enoch, and Enoch improves it or adds to it, and Enoch passes it down to Noah, who improves it, and so on. And since we've reviewed a lot in detail, let's just go over a review of the quick rules. Although before we begin, one word of caution and information about the style of what is coming. I am going to use language reminiscent of biblical revelation patterns for the purposes of easy absorption and remembrance. This is going to sound like I'm making my own Bible verses up, in other words, especially if you're used to older translations like King James. In doing so, please know I am not trying to add to scripture or promote myself as a prophet. I'm just using the style because it works really well for clarity and remembrance. So here is rule number 1. As if Yahweh was talking to Adam. This is what I infer from the information that is in the scripture that Adam knows. So, rule number 1. Remember, Adam, the Sabbath day to keep it sanctified, counting from day 1, Sunday, to day 7, Saturday. This is a hard count from creation forwards. It is not tied to the sun, moon, or the stars. Rule number 2. Also, Adam, recall that on day 4 of creation week, the sun, moon, and stars were made to mark time. Rule number 3. Then, Adam, begin your year at the time you were created, through the knowledge that you were given, since you were created as a fully formed adult. This means, Adam, to begin counting weeks from Wednesday to Tuesday, while still understanding creation week has ordered your days 1 to 7 from Sunday to Saturday. 2 separate 7-day counting systems. Rule number 4. Remember also, Adam, that you are meant to tend the garden in Eden, to know when to seed, to prune, to harvest, and to watch the cycles of life of the animals and birds that you have named. Use your preloaded knowledge to count Wednesday to Tuesday from the start of fall equinox. Rule number 5. Remember also, Adam, the name of your creator, Yahweh, who was called this in Genesis 2, verse 7, and again in Genesis 4, verse 26. At that time, men began to call upon the name of Yahweh. And at that time, Adam, you were still relatively young. You had 695 years of life left when Genesis 4:26 said men, which would have to include you, Adam, began to call upon the name of Yahweh. In fact, you probably called on him before anyone else. Remember further, Adam, that his name is my name for eternity. Exodus 3, verse 14 to 16. So the name of Yahweh, your creator, Adam, cannot change spelling or numerical value. And this, a little lesson, little reminder. Yahweh is made of 4 letters in Hebrew. Here are the English equivalents. Yod, or Y, is the 10th letter of the Hebrew alphabet and has a value of 10. He or H, fifth letter of the alphabet for Hebrew, and therefore has a numerical value of 5. W or Vav, depending upon who you talk to, same letter, is the sixth letter of the Hebrew alphabet and therefore has a value of 6. And the second H or He is 5. 10 plus 5 plus 6 plus 5 equals 26. Rule number 6. So now, Adam, combine all that you know. Count your time from your birthday, when you were born at fall equinox. Again, for more information, review the teachings on Adam. Starting on day 4, which is Wednesday, when the sun, moon, and stars are placed in the heavens. Genesis 1:14 through 19. But never forget, Adam, your real week is still running Sunday to Saturday, and you were made on day 6. So, and count his name by these 7-day increments. 26 times 7. Sorry about that little cough. Rule number 7. When you are in week 26, Adam, observe the sunrise and you will see it rise at 90 degrees. You will know you reached the half point, which is what we call spring equinox. But like the 2 trees in Eden and the 2 angels at the eastern gate representing the sun, resume another 26-week count from there. When you conclude your second set of 26 weeks, because it's just a seamless thing, which totals 52 weeks and ends 364 days, which is 364 as we see here. 52 times 7 equals 364. From when you started, then Adam, understand that your official end, that third day of the week, Tuesday, is not the real end of your counting. The 53rd Wednesday from when you started is day 365, and it will balance the real week. Rule number 9. Starting that 53rd Wednesday, day 365, check the rising sun, Adam, to see if it rose 90 degrees, which you can easily do, Adam, with a plumb line or with other primitive tools. And we went over that, indicating that fall equinox has come. Rule number 10. Use sunset on Wednesday to see if it's set at 270 degrees pure west, because 270 and 90 equals 360. So if it rises at 90, it will set at 270. Rule number 11. Use Thursday dawn to Friday dawn as what we call witness days to see if the sun rises at or greater than 90 degrees and or sets 270 degrees or less, Wednesday and Thursday night. Because the Shabbat starts Friday sunset, you don't use Friday sunset. But you will use, as it says, and also check the sun's rising position at Friday dawn. If you have, Adam, 2+ witnesses, the autumnal equinox, the fall equinox, your birthday, has happened. Point back to the previous Wednesday as New Year's Day, NYD. On the other hand, Adam, look at this. If Adam by Friday sunset, not including that sunset, the sunset on Friday is the Shabbat. So you, Adam, are basically going to use that as a deadline. And if by that deadline you have not seen 2 witnesses that the old year has died, then advance to the next Wednesday and resume your first 26-week count from there. Also, record each year's data, observe you add a leap week every 5 years. Remember the cycle. Number 13. Now, Adam, pass all that you've learned, all that you know, down to your son Seth, then Enosh, Canaan, Mahalalel, Jared, and Enoch. Make sure each generation understands the critical importance of keeping things intact until Father Yah speaks to the next walking dedicated man, who is in this case Enoch. Thank you, Adam. You may go. Rule number 14. Okay, Enoch, it's your turn. Make sure you've listened carefully to everything your ancestors from Adam have taught and make it a part of you. From there I will give you prophecy for your lifespan, 365 years, the age of your son when he has his firstborn, for which you will see with your own eyes, 187 years, and the same for your grandson, 182. Although you won't see Enoch, Lamech get born. You'll be gone by then. Understand then, Enoch, that as you count the 52 weeks, those 26-week cycles of two times as Adam did, you will plug these numbers of 365, 182, 187 into the count. You know that the year is 365 whole days long, and that 365 holds the 52 weeks. You will also know, Enoch, that the averages between equinoxes and solstices is between 182 and 187 days, which is in the 26th week. The 26th week encompasses days 182 to 188. Rule number 16. Once you have mastered these things, Enoch, and walk with me 300 years, you must pass this information down perfectly to Methuselah, Lamech, and Noah. For your great-grandson, whose name means peace, is my next walking dedicated man. Now, Noah, listen to me. Hear me. Rule number 17. Noah, you will take all the wisdom of Adam and Enoch and add to it the first solar months, the first months of any kind. Make 12 months to start the first Wednesday of the year as your ancestors did, the luminary count, from fall equinox. Each month is 30 days long, but after number 12, after the 12th 30-day month and the 360 days, you will balance the rest of the year as Adam and Enoch did. Rule number 18. Count your flood year, Noah, by this system, but after the flood, know that I have given you the actual names of the seasons: seed time, harvest, winter, summer. Genesis 8, verse 22. For these seasons, Noah, I put my rainbow in the cloud, that you will remember each season with an extra day. Rule number 19. Take your old months of 30 days each and add a memorial day for each season, equinox or solstice, spring, fall, equinox, summer, winter, solstice, which would be at the end of every 3rd, 6th, 9th, and 12th months. Then Noah, pass on to the generations the fact that you had these two calendars, so that Moses will hint at it later when I prompt him to do so. And basically what I mean by that there, folks, is we know that it was after 150 days, that from when the flood started to when the ark rests on the mountains of Ararat. But that phrase, after 150 days, has always puzzled me, because why not say 151 days? Why just say after 150 days? And it turned out that, my research led me to the direction that Moses was saying that Noah had two different calendars, one before the flood and one after. The one before the flood would have counted it as 151 days from the start of the flood to when the ark rests on the mountains of Ararat. The calendar that Noah instituted after the flood, however, would have counted the same period from the 17th day of month 2 to the 17th day of month 7. Also would be after 150 days, but would be 152 days. And so by being vague on purpose, Moses is telling us that it's after 150 days. Both calendars are after 150 days, but they have a slightly different total. But as we talked about in the Noah teaching, we know the actual number of days was under the Noah's old calendar, but this was Moses' way of hinting there were two different ways to count during Noah's lifetime. Rule number 20. Noah, spread this calendar to your descendants as they repopulate the world, and remember the moon pattern I gave you towards the end of your life. The moon is going to become increasingly more important. Noah is living throughout much of Genesis 10 and 11, and there is an extensive reference to the length of lunar months and lunar cycles in those chapters. Then have your descendant Uz establish a distant land, so that he may pass this on to Job and the other leading men of the East. Rule number 21. And now, Job, you are the next walking dedicated man. You have received so much from me and your ancestors. To you I will give the knowledge of how the stars bring in the seasons, and which constellations are given for a given purpose. Learn well, Job, and pass the stars you know back to my people who are soon to leave Ur and make a new nation. And that brings us to Abram. First, let's see that the blessings Abram, or later Abraham, let's talk about the blessings that he gets from Father Yah. Yep, let's begin here with seeing those blessings. And Yahweh said to Abram, go yourself out of your land, from your relatives, and from your father's house, to a land which I will show you. And I shall make you a great nation, and bless you, and make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. And I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse him who curses you. And in you all the clans of the earth shall be blessed. Genesis 12:1-3. Now Abram, later Abraham, is 75 years old when he first hears the divine voice. He is also named originally Abram, which means actually exalted father or father on high. In fact, Abram is so exalted in Father Yah's eyes, he is very nearly referred to symbolically as the father of the stars. Let me show you why. After these events, the word of Yahweh came to Abram in a vision, saying, do not be afraid, Abram. I am your shield. Your reward is exceedingly great. And Abram said, Master, what would you give me, seeing I go childless, and the heir of my house is Eleazar of Damascus? And Abram said, see, you have given me no seed, and see, the one born in my house is my heir. And see, the word of Yahweh came to him, saying, this one is not your heir, but he who comes from your own body is your heir. And he brought Abraham outside and said, look now towards the heavens and count the stars, if you are able to count them. And he, meaning Yahweh, said to him, so are your seed. So Abram is the father on high, that's what his name means, has children who are like the stars of the heavens. So if Abraham is obviously the father of his children who are like the stars, he is the father of the stars, at least poetically. This tells us that the night sky is becoming more important also. Previously, like with Noah, Father Yah made a covenant with the earth and the daytime sun and her seasons. Seedtime, harvest, summer, winter. All agriculture is pretty much done during the daytime. Some harvesting might be done at night under the full moon. And only in Job do we start seeing hints that we should become aware of the laws of the heavens and how they set their rule on the earth. Job 38:31-33. But now, however, night, along with the day, has a covenant too. Specifically, the night stars are linked directly to the earth. I shall certainly bless you, Genesis 22:17 says, and I shall certainly increase your seed as the stars of the heavens, and as the sand which is on the seashore. And let your seed possess the gate of their enemies. So you have a star component and an earth component, the sands on the seashore. And this is also with Abraham's family personally. Count the stars, so shall your descendants be. But soon, two other major events in Abraham's life will coincide and create additional instructions for how Abraham is to work his calendar. Before getting into that, though, it's important to note that the word that he is given to count is sephar in Hebrew. And this is what we see. It is to recount, relate, to measure, number, carefully observe and consider, reckon, enumerator, and so on. There's more to this. Same root, scribes, able to read and write, and the word book comes from here. So scribe, writing, book, recording, accounting, that is all in the command for Abraham to count the stars. And also, you can see here that this is from chiefly in the form of scrolls, so that Abraham is putting the information on scrolls. So when Abraham is commanded to count the stars, within that word for count, as we alluded to, write down in a book, be a scribe, make a scroll, do the math, name and classify the stars. In other words, be an astronomer. Abraham, of course, also inherits all of Job's star catalog information, which was the last film in the series, number 5, I believe. And in addition to that, the place he comes from will make him extremely knowledgeable as an astronomer. And Terah took his son Abram and his grandson Lot, the son of Haran, and a daughter-in-law Sarai, and his sons Abram's and his son Abram's wife, and they went out with them from Ur of the Chaldeans to go to the land of Canaan, and they came to Haran and dwelt there. So for a very long time, most Bible scholars assumed that Ur of the Chaldees meant southern Babylon, because the Chaldean people were from there. But now opinion is shifting. Because the problem is that the Chaldeans were not in southern Ur Babylon at the time of Abraham. In fact, not until 700 BCE did they become prominent there. And that's more than 1,000 years after Abraham died. Many Bible skeptics said this proved the scripture was anachronistic and the product of a much later time than the events it records. Fortunately, though, early 20th century archaeology provided a much stronger solution to the alleged problem. In 1933, French archaeologist André Parot found a lost library at a place called Mari. It was dated to the time of Abraham, and it recorded previous migrations from its nearby major city in the north, also called Ur. Included on these lists were names like Ru, Serug, Nahor, Terah, Abram, Isaac, Jacob. To be sure, not all these names could have matched the family of the Proto-Hebrews that included the patriarchs of the scripture. But it was crystal clear that some of them were in fact talking about the same people that are listed in Genesis 10 and 11. Archaeologists then found that there were no fewer than 6 cities named Ur, and each one had advanced, sophisticated mathematical and astronomical knowledge. While most of the cities named Ur were in the southern area of Mesopotamia, 2 of them were found from the north, and one Ur was very near Haran, where Abraham's family went to. This led some leading scholars to adjust their thinking. Abram's Ur was really in the north of Mesopotamia, and the family lists and customs from that place, which are recorded in another document called the Nuzi tablets, precisely match those of Abraham's family. In the 1950s, scholar Dr. Werner Keller said in his book, The Bible is History, he said it outright, named the chapter, and he said Abraham was from the kingdom of Mari, and therefore his Ur had to be in the north. But no matter which Ur was the one Abraham was from, there is no doubt he would have learned a lot of advanced astronomy there. And it was these same people who in about 2100 BCE developed what we now call the zodiac. So Abram knew the signs of the pagans, Aries, Taurus, and so on. However, Genesis also tells us that Abram left that paganism behind. So he must have found a way to take the animal deity associations used for false worship and adapt them into kosher practice of an invisible mighty one who doesn't tolerate sharing glory. To my mind, there was only one way that Abraham could do this. If you're going to use the stars to track regions of night space, You track the brightest star of each zodiac sign. Otherwise, it's not practical. For the sake of clarity, though, let me express my belief, which I cannot prove, that the Hebrews and their biblical ancestors, they actually developed the original zodiac that Babylon stole sometime after the flood. They knew not how to make or imagine. They knew not to make or imagine graven images for worship. So the kosher zodiac used bright stars to point to a region of dark space. The stars, like the sun, would rotate in and out of the chambers throughout the year. In an imaginary 360-degree circle, 1/12 of that star month represented 30 degrees. So when the pagans would say Aries is in the house, the Hebrews would say that brightest star that happens to be in Aries means it's spring. And they would say, oh yeah, there's that bright star, the first bright star of spring, the first bright star representing the first star month of spring. Then after the flood, one of the sons of either Cush or Shem reestablished the empires of Upper and Lower Mesopotamia, and they soon perverted the original brightest star system and turned them into animals or gods. Ironically, Abraham grew up learning that system, but he switched back to the original, to the kosher zodiac, the bright star system. But two major events in Abraham's life also have strong calendrical implications. We see here, this is my covenant which you guard between me and you and your seed after you. Every male child among you is to be circumcised. And you shall circumcise the flesh of your foreskin, and it shall become a sign of the covenant between me and you. And a son of 8 days is circumcised by you, every male child in your generations who is born in your house or bought with silver from any foreigner who is not of your seed. He who is born in your house and he who is bought with your silver has to be circumcised. So shall my covenant be in your flesh for an everlasting covenant. And an uncircumcised male child who is not circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin, his life shall be cut off from his people. He has broken my covenant. Genesis 17:10-14. Now, circumcision literally means to cut around in a circle. And you can even see that in English. Circum, it's actually from two Latin words. Circum, around, circle, where you get circle, circumcision, incision, an incision in the form of a circle. The circle represents the solar year, and later on that circle will be divided by 12. 12 tribes of Israel, each of whom get a circle cut, a binding tie, a sign. And that word in Hebrew, ot, is the same Hebrew word for sun, moon, and stars to mark time. Signs, seasons, days, and years. Another clue given by them on the most traumatic day of Abraham's life shows him a prophetic clue about what is coming in the time of Moses. And Abraham lifted his eyes and looked and saw behind him a ram caught in a bush by its horns. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered it up as a burnt offering instead of his son. Genesis 22:13. That ram died in place of Isaac. And for Abraham, there was a double message. Abraham's earlier life in pagan Ur had him fully trained in the pagan zodiac before he switched over to bright star or kosher zodiac. Abraham literally grew up knowing the sign of the ram. Aries was the start of spring. So by saving his son, quote, by the ram, Abraham knew the calendar was eventually going to shift to starting in spring. Why? Because Abraham knew that his seed was going to bless the world and represented a resetting up of covenant. And in that resetting of covenant, counting from Abraham as the origin point, we knew that it would eventually set to Isaac. It would set to spring, and the ram who died in Isaac's place is symbolic of the old year dying at the time of the ram. Spring. This is because Isaac was also to establish the future destiny of Abraham's lineage. And Elohim said, no, Sarah, your wife, is truly bearing a son to you, and you shall call his name Yitzchak. and I shall establish my covenant with him, Yitzchak, Isaac, for an everlasting covenant, and his seed after him. And Abraham also had a prophecy that told him almost to the very day when the calendar change was going to happen, when it was going to go from the count that Adam knew in fall to the new count, spring to spring. We read, and it came to be, when the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell upon Abram. That sea of frightening great darkness fell upon him. And he said to Abram, know for certain that your seed are to be sojourners in a land that is not theirs, and they shall serve them and afflict them 400 years. But the nation whom they serve I am going to judge, and afterward let them come out with great possessions. Now as for you, you are to go to your fathers in peace. You are to be buried at a good old age. Then in the 4th generation they shall return here. For the crookedness of the Amorites is not yet complete. This prophecy has, I believe, not always been properly understood. The first thing to understand, though, is that the 400 years in the prophecy is from your descendants, not from Abraham himself. I'm going to go backwards and show this. Your seed, your descendants, not Abram, right? Exodus 12:40 then gives us the same prophecy, but from the moment Abraham received it, not from when Isaac comes on the scene. And that's the difference of 30 years. Abraham received it at age 75, stating that the Exodus was 430 years to the day. Of that day that he had that prophecy, exactly was Exodus. Therefore, we need to bridge a gap of 30 years from Genesis, counting from Isaac, 400, and Exodus counting from Abraham, 430. It's 25 years from here to Isaac's birth, and 5 more years to bridge that gap to get to here. And Abraham circumcised his son Yitzchak when he was 8 days old, as Elohim had commanded him. And Abram was 100 years old when his son Yitzchak was born to him. So that's 25 years. And the child grew and was weaned, and Abraham made a great feast on the day that Yitzchak was weaned. Very important detail. In Leviticus 27 verse 6, the monetary value for a male infant or toddler increases upon that toddler turning 5 years old. This is because 5 years is the age of weaning a male child off of his mother's milk. And so we now have a total 25 years from Abraham's prophecy to Isaac's birth, and then from there 5 additional years to when Isaac is weaned, and from there 400 years to Exodus. 25, 5, and 400, 430. And finally, there is the phrase, for the sin crookedness of the Amorites is not yet complete. This refers to a specific event mentioned in Deuteronomy 3 verse 8 when the Amorites were finally destroyed. And this event is firmly dated to Moses' last year, 40 years after Exodus. And that's why, even though the Hebrew text that was finalized in the Middle Ages seems to be saying there's 645 years, 400 years in Egypt, whereas other ancient sources say Egypt and Canaan, the total was always 430 years. This is important because, again, there's this long-standing disagreement as to how long this time should be amongst ancient versions. The Septuagint, or LLX, 70, that's the Roman numerals for 70, named after the number of Jewish scholars that are supposed to have translated it, was translated from a very ancient Hebrew source, says the time was 430 years in Egypt and in Canaan. This matches the timeline just given for the sin of the Amorites. However, the final form of the Hebrew text done by the scribes or Masoretes in about 1000 CE says 430 years in Egypt. I believe that the Septuagint is the original reading and somehow in Canaan was dropped by the medieval Hebrew editors. Even so, we still know it was originally there because the same Masoretic text has the chronology that clearly is supporting 430 total years and not 645. The point of all this is simple. The instruction of circumcision tells Abraham to think of time as a circle. The ram sign, the ram dying in Isaac's place, along with the 430 years prophecy of Genesis 15, tells Abraham that in years to come, the circle of time will count from spring, not from fall, as it had been up until this moment. But the calendar of the patriarchs doesn't end with Abraham. Far from it. The next 3 generations after Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph, will develop these systems to much greater levels of precision. So next up, we're going to see how Abraham's descendants get even greater insights. Our first stop is with Isaac, and I put Isaac, the night horizon. Let me explain this. Of all the patriarchs, Isaac is the one who lives the most peaceful and therefore, as we see here, level life. This is a man who falls in love with Rivka at first sight. They have one of the most loving, stable marriages in the scripture. Isaac avoids the pitfalls of his father Abraham and his sons Jacob and Esau. And like this most level of patriarchs, like Enoch, Isaac has a code on his number of years in life. We saw that Enoch was 365, one for every whole day of the solar year. And in Isaac's case, all the days of Isaac were 180 years. So Yitzchak breathed his last and died and was gathered to his people, aged and satisfied of days. And his sons Esau and Yaakov buried him. Genesis 35, 28 through 29. Isaac is the only person in all of Scripture to live exactly 180 years. And this represents the night horizon, which is 180 degrees. Half a circle. That is what Isaac represents, the night horizon. Therefore, since Abraham is the father of the stars, his son Isaac represents the nighttime horizon through which we track and view and record the stars, moons, and planets. Before, the horizon was only concerned with tracking the rising and setting of the sun. So, starting in the morning and then at evening. It's all daytime stuff. And that was through the rainbow sign of Noah. But things have changed. The stars have been explained by Job, the ones to track, and Abraham is writing them down and classifying them. But next up, we have this amazing series of dreams from Joseph. And Joseph dreamed a dream and told it to his brothers, so they hated him even more. And he said to them, "Please listen to this dream which I have dreamed. See, we were binding sheaves in the midst of the field, and see, my sheaf rose up and also stood up. And see, your sheaves stood all around and bowed down to my sheaf." And his brothers said to him, "Shall you indeed reign over us? Shall you indeed rule over us?" So they hated him even more for his dreams and for his words. And he dreamed still another dream, and related it to his brothers and said, "See, I have dreamed another dream. And see, the sun, moon, and 11 stars bowed down to me." And he related it to his father and his brothers. And his father rebuked him and said, "What is this dream that you have dreamed? Shall we, your mother, and I, and your brothers indeed come down to the earth before you?" Bow down to the earth. And the order in the Hebrew is actually, "Shall I, your mother, and your brothers bow down to the earth?" His brothers envied him, but his father guarded the word. And that's why this is called Joseph's dream, Jacob's interpretation. Although for the sake of completeness, I should point out, the brothers also accurately interpreted the first dream, and Jacob did the second. Genesis 37, 5 through 11. The calendrical ramifications of this dream are nothing short of stunning. Joseph's first dream was about binding sheaves, which is the wheat harvest, in other words, late spring, or, going towards summer. And the brother's sheaves bowed down to his, foretelling Joseph's elevation to power. Then when Joseph relates the second dream, this time it's the sun, moon, and 11 stars bowing down to him. The linkage between the sheaves, the sun, moon, and stars was clear. It was the cycles of the heavens that brought about the seasons on the earth and the agricultural process throughout the year, including the wheat harvest. But it is Jacob, not Joseph, who actually interprets that dream. Joseph said, "Sun, moon, and 11 stars bow down to me." Jacob said, "Shall I, your mother and brothers, bow down to you?" Therefore Jacob called himself the sun, his wife Rachel, though deceased, the moon, and his other sons, the 11 stars. Then we have this. I see him, but not now. I observe him, but not near. A star shall come out of Yaakov, and a scepter shall rise out of Yisrael, and shall smite the corners of Moab, and shall destroy all the sons of Seth. Numbers 24, verse 17. Our sun is actually a star. So with Abraham as the father of the stars, Isaac as the night horizon from which we viewed the stars, it made sense that Jacob would be the sun, Rachel the moon, and all of Jacob's sons, including Joseph himself, would be the 12 bright stars that we mentioned of the kosher zodiac. But I think Jacob didn't get the dream interpreted entirely right. It's just my opinion, but this is what I believe. Jacob was a very righteous man who had a flaw at playing favorites. This was evident most deeply with Rachel and their son, Joseph. And I think Jacob put all his love into Rachel while ignoring the fact that Israel had a total, including Rachel, of 4 mothers. To me, it makes sense that if all of Jacob's sons became the stars, that Israel's mothers, which are Leah, Rachel, Bilhah, Zilpah, would represent the 4 main phases of the moon. Leah is the beginning of Jacob's strength, and therefore she is the new moon. She is the eldest daughter of Laban, the first wife, the first mother, and the most fertile. So she is the new moon. Therefore Rachel, for whose love Jacob coveted the most, burned brightly as the full moon, because that's what she was to him. Later, Solomon, I think, is inspired by this to pen the Song of Songs, where in 6 verse 10, he compares the light of a full moon to the glow of a beautiful woman's face. And Bilhah and Zilpah were not full wives, so they represent the half moons. But whatever that case may be, the calendar that Jacob and Joseph knew was truly nearing completion as a full-bodied, multi-tiered timekeeping system. Not only had it directly incorporated solar cycles with some observation of the moon and correlation to the stars, now the 12 bright stars, or the kosher zodiac, are clearly linked to the 12 tribes of Israel. This will then totally prepare Israel for the greatest calendar expansion it will ever get, the one that will happen under Moses. By Abraham's prophecy, the year reckoning will soon change from fall to fall to spring. By Isaac's example, the stars will be endlessly tracked in the horizon that mirrors his life. And by Jacob's prophetic utterances, the sun, moon, and stars will all be placed in a unified choreography for the first time. And by Joseph's dreams, the linkage of the stars to the tribes of Israel and to the seasons on the earth is firmly established. And all of this leads to the next one in the series, part 7, from Joseph to Moses. Thank you very much for your kind attention. I'm Andrew Gabriel Roth, and to find out more about my ministry, about subscribing to weekly Torah and New Testament teachings, please see my website, www.onefaith.onepeopleministries.com, and drop me a line. I'd love to hear from you, what you think about this teaching and the Walking Dedicated Men series overall. And thank you very much for taking time to listen to this beautiful story about the true biblical calendar. And as we like to say in Hebrew, Shalom.